It's been a little while since we last recorded, but we're back. The death lineup. We're going to talk some Warriors basketball. We're going to talk the All-Star break. We're going to talk a little bit about Ethan Strauss's party that we attended. But first off, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm not feeling on top of the world in terms of health wise. Feeling a little sick, but other than that, I'm fine.
All right. So I want to make mention again. We have a Discord server for Bay Area Sports Talk. If you want to go to the Twitter account, BSPN shows, there is a pinned tweet there that gives you a link, or you can always shoot me an email, gg@bspnmedia.com, and I can send you an invite. There's not too many people in there yet. I'm going to be actively searching for people on Twitter to come through, so be aware. You may get a DM from me about coming through and joining. All right. So before we, I kind of wanted to talk about Ethan's party first because it happened last week, last Wednesday, and if we don't talk about it now, I'm going to forget about it. But we got to meet Ethan Strauss at his little Substack party. Who was the guy that the party he was actually the true party creator?
Jesse Signal
Yeah, Jesse Signal. He's got a Substack
or
of his own.
Signal or Single, something like that.
But what did you think about meeting Ethan? Like, I mean, not that, Ethan's not a big time guy or anything, but he is a journalist and an active writer and somebody whose work you read. But yeah, we got to meet him.
I thought it was cool. I feel like it's weird, listening to these podcasts for the past, I don't know how long I've been heavily listening to all these podcasts, but not seeing a picture of them and then putting the voice to the face and it's like not matching. And like, I
So
always
you
thought
didn't
that
even know what Ethan looked like.
I had no clue what he looked like.
Interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, he's like definitely like I like I like listening to Ethan and reading Ethan because I feel like he challenges my viewpoint sometimes and it makes
Hmm.
me want to like kind of rethink things and maybe bring up a counterpoint to what he counters me with and stuff like that. So I think yeah, the highlight of the night honestly was was taking a shot with a New York Times journalist and the Atlantic who was written for the New York Times and the Atlantic. I'm not co-signing Jesse Signal's opinions because I know he's been maybe in the media for other maybe. I'm not necessarily saying I agree with him. I just think the idea of taking a shot with a guy who wrote for the New York Times and the Atlantic is pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's why having Ben Cruz with us was very valuable because he knew Ethan. And if more people, like, I feel like Ethan didn't really advertise it very well, but if like more media people came through, Marcus or Tim or even the Light Years guys, then it would, having been there would have been the conduit towards those conversations. But like we got there immediately. Ben and Ethan see each other. Boom, we're talking, and we got to talk to him for a good 20-30 minutes. So that was cool. I just wish that there were more sports people there, and maybe next time Ethan does something like that, he'll do. I would definitely help him if he needed help on something like that because I've done big time party planning in previous jobs. So, okay, so let's talk about the last time we potted. Ben Cruz was with us, and we were just, GP2 is back. Unfortunately, James Wiseman is gone. GP2 is not really back. GP2 is on the shelf, and he may not get back until very late in the season. So prior to us having the GP2 Wiseman conversation, it was on the basis of like, yeah, GP2 is playing, but now what do you feel about that trade after the Warriors either got bamboozled or they knew what they were getting and they just needed to get off the Wiseman contract, and they're kind of fibbing about what they knew about GP's injury?
Oh, that's interesting. I think I'm gonna lean towards they got a little swindled just because I know I probably have a higher opinion on Wiseman than most, but also like you make that trade because you realize that you need to give this season a shot, unlike trying to compete and trying to contend. You owe it to the veterans, you owe it to Steph, Clay, and Draymond, and the guy you bring back is literally like what they want, a guy they've played with, a guy they really like, and a guy who's good, but he might not be available to like the playoffs. Like we don't know. He's getting reevaluated in like a month or something like that. But I think you're swindled in the sense of like you needed someone who can come help right now. You needed someone who can fit into the offense and contribute right now. But GP2 might not be able to contribute all year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Wiseman already wasn't contributing, but I don't know. I feel like I've changed my tune a little bit the last couple of days.
Okay, so we do have one game of Wiseman in Detroit. He sort of, if I mean, it felt exactly how Wiseman and Golden State happened, except he was allowed to stay on the court. He wasn't, he wasn't, he didn't have to be moved off quickly to bring in somebody else because all of a sudden the Warriors were were losing. In Detroit, they want to win games, but he's not going to be pulled off the court because all of a sudden he comes in and they're a -5 in 2 minutes with him playing.
Yeah. And then that's kind of what happened, right? In the first Detroit game, he goes in, they go down a little bit. You see a lot of the same stuff you saw with the Warriors, but I still feel like a lot of the same stuff you saw with the Warriors was potential, was, scoring 30 points in Brooklyn, although that was a throwaway game. Like I don't think that many people are able to just kind of score 30 like that. But, Wiseman, I think he's got something to prove to himself that he could like score and that he's meant to be there. And I think that's why you see sometimes in his offense that he gets the ball and damn well he's not passing it.
Yeah.
So I think he's got to get a little bit of that out of the way and then start playing like some team basketball to stick around long term, because you see the talent, but I think he's like no one's gonna want to pass it. Ty Jerome never passed it to him. He knew he wasn't getting the ball back.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about this because you think about where the NBA is going, and it was not surprising, but it was a little bit of a change in philosophy when they drafted him, right? Because the reason they won titles is because they either had a big man like Bogut, who was the ultimate team player and who just sacrificed all of his offense for defense, or they just said, forget the center position. We're just going small. Like, we don't even need it. So drafting Wiseman was a strategic change for them, a philosophy change for them.
Yeah.
And I wonder if Wiseman I wonder if they thought Wiseman could be a big and just play 4 out with one big man, and that he had the talent to, kind of be a little bit of a point center in a sense too. He gets the ball, if no double is there, then he makes a move. If the defense is running around, then he's the guy who makes the play. And if you watch him play, the second he gets the ball, his head goes down. So that he's not actively looking for that. So it just seemed like hindsight is 2020, obviously, but coming off of 19 and drafting him and making that decision to sort of change philosophy about what your team is, I wonder, even though Joe Lacob probably feels that James Wiseman is still talented, I wonder if they would go back if they were being honest and change that pick
They're
just
they're
from the
taking they're taking
philosophy perspective.
Halliburton. They're taking Halliburton. If you know what you know now and you get to go back and redo that pick, you are drafting Tyrese Halliburton or LaMelo, one of the two. But Lacob thought that Wiseman was Embiid. Wrong. He's not. Can he be Karl Anthony Towns? Probably not. Can he be like DeAndre Ayton on what that guy brings on a scoring level? I think so. I think that's still in the realm of possibility because I'm a little lower on DeAndre Ayton to begin with. That guy's not an all-star, so I think he can become that. And we'll see. Time will tell.
But do you think that they would ever go that route again? Like, let's say a big man becomes available, like a DeAndre Ayton. Do the Warriors go, oh, we want to target this guy who can switch, who maybe is not going to get too many rebounds, but he can actively play defense? Or do they just go, you know what? This is just not our philosophy. This is never going to work with Steph Curry until he's done playing.
I think okay, so if they went back into that draft with that philosophy of I just don't I think if they were given the opportunity to do it again and say next year or 2 years, Steph, Clay, and Draymond are on the way out, so they could technically do it now. But if you had the option in the Wiseman class, I wish I had this on record. I know it's going to sound like BS now that I'm saying it now. I initially wanted to trade down for an Onyeka Okongwu. I thought that he was like the smart pick, and he was at least certified going to at least be good. And looking back at that, obviously he's like just a younger athletic Looney, right? So he would have just been perfect. But um, yeah, I think if you go back to that specific draft, they don't switch up. They don't do the swing for the fences pick. They don't, yes, do the philosophy changing swing for the fences pick. I think if you give them the opportunity to do it again in a year or two, they might try it again because we might have a new wave of Golden State Warrior players coming in anyway. So
Yeah. What do you think about Bob Myers's disposition, his comments on the GP2 thing? He seemed I didn't feel like he was I don't want to say he's not telling truth because that is absolutely I'm not going to question anything. Who knows about that? But when they made that pick, we were just like, "Oh, so we're not worried about GP2's health. He barely started playing again." Like we even mentioned it, I think on the show with Ben. So for them to go like, "Yeah, we had no idea, Portland did X, Y, and Z. We need the league to get into this." I don't know if I buy that 100%. Like you had to know, like the first thing you ask Portland when you're doing this deal is, we need to see his medicals. Like he just came back. Like we need to see, what's going on there. And I just don't buy that they went, oh yeah, Portland's just like, yeah, he's good. And they're like, okay, let's make the deal. Like it just doesn't seem to work that way. So that's why I was questioning whether or not it was like maybe 75-25 that it was about getting out of under that deal. But I don't know. He just didn't seem confident. He seemed a little like flustered up there. I didn't sense that he was uh, like I don't know. Like when GMs make these deals, you usually see like they're just like, yes, this is going to help us win. And he was just up there going like, it is what it is. We can't comment on it. And we were kind of joking about it at Ethan's event about how he just kind of looked checked out, right? Like that's kind of how he looked in that moment. And maybe it was because he feels the heat from being the guy who signs off on that deal. But I don't know. What do you think about Bob?
that's a good point. I didn't even think about that because you're right. Like, yeah, most GMs when they make a move and they get a player, it's their name behind it. Basically, everyone knows that the GM made the trade. In different teams, different situations, but yeah, you're right. He didn't like sound super psyched about having GP2 back. But I mean, there was that moment Friday night, right? It was last Friday against like the Lakers or something where he came and sat down next to
Yeah.
Bob as if to show like, yeah,
Yeah.
they're gonna pick me. I'm gonna stay. But you're right. I wonder if like someone mentioned, and it's true, like the trade deadline, you're able to make trades this entire year.
Yeah.
Like there's not a window of like, okay, here's the trade deadline. You're only able to make trades the day before. And I feel like I don't know. There's definitely some desperation tactics in there from. I feel like the Warriors were battling within the front office and the coaching staff. The front office is like, play this guy, and like we want to keep Wiseman, and the coaching staff is like, we can't play him. We need someone who's going to help win. The players are like, we can't play him. We need someone who's going to help us win. And I think Bob having to mediate that, and then Bob maybe making like a desperation move, to bring back GP2 at the last minute. And it's like you can't. Like maybe you just didn't have time to worry about it. It sounds very not Bob Myers like because I'd like to think he's one of the smartest GMs, one of
And
the
I
most
think
strategic
he is.
GMs. But
He's also one of the most thoughtful speakers when it comes to those guys, right? Like
yeah,
he seems like he's an honest man and he is thinking about what he's going to say. He's not just pitch man. He's not just spewing out, Joe Lacob marketing ideas. He does seem like he is someone who has his own thoughts. So that's why it was so interesting because I don't expect him to be like a rah guy. That's just not who he is. But after last year, we were talking about this, and when it came to Wiseman, the worst thing for Wiseman was that the Warriors won the title because it solidified the blueprint for how to do it again, which is it's just Draymond and Looney. Like if Wiseman cannot do these things, then he cannot play in this lineup with these guys. So I'm pulling back and saying not only was it the worst thing for Wiseman, it was the worst thing for Lacob's leverage as maybe the James Wiseman voice in the front office, right? Because if he's still like Wiseman's the future, and then they go, we won this title without this guy. Like that just shows you how our philosophy in basketball does not work with what he's good at. And then you can even go further and say, winning that title last year kind of solidified Bob Myers' style. So maybe he's coming into this thing going like, all this stuff that we collectively, but me, leading, won a title, and maybe I need a little bit more, a little bit more pats on the back, a little bit more money here because nobody expected us to do it. And so it's kind of interesting the way that thing works. And Bill Simmons always talks about Pat Riley's quote about the disease of more, like when you win a title. And this is how I remember him. I don't remember where I read it, multiple places, but after the Lakers won a title, he's like, not only is Magic and Kareem and James Worthy doing commercials, but like the ninth guy on the bench now has a commercial. And so he thinks that he's made it. And so you come into the next season and these guys think that they're the badasses around town, and how do you get them to come back and play like they're still the ninth man and great and grind on that. So that is also something to think about that I don't think we necessarily thought about at the beginning of the season. Is there's some folks who made the success that is not just Steph and Draymond and Clay, because those guys solidified their core as Hall of Famers. They were probably Hall of Famers before, but that was like the icing on the cake. But what about Steve Kerr? What about Bob Myers? What about Lakeup? Like, how does the success change the way that those three guys look at things? Does Kerr ride out in the sunset with Steph? Like, is that it? Would that be it for him, or is he interested in like trying to coach young players? Because that 2020 season, he didn't seem like he was that happy coaching that team.
I mean, I feel like he should. I feel like there's talk of, those Warriors championships with KD didn't count because they were a super team. Those allegations, like Steve Kerr has some of his own of being handed a team that was ready for the championship, and he goes and coaches them and wins 4. Although I don't necessarily buy that. I think Steve Kerr definitely helped a lot. But yeah, I think if he wanted to, change up the narrative a little bit, he should stay. He should see how these guys play. I wanted to say though for Bob Myers that, I mean, he kind of did hit it out of the park again with, although we're not good, but like the idea of what Dante DiVincenzo is, like he's been awesome. That guy's not going to resign. Like what you were able to do with the two-way guys, I'd like to see the two-way minutes of the entire year for all teams. I'm sure Anthony Lamb and Ty Jerome are probably at the top there. Like they shouldn't have to be. I think Bob Myers, although the team is not doing that well, I think he did have a lot of great offseason signings. Maybe you could make fun of or push back on the JaMychal Green one, but other than that, like all of them have been great. It's really just the guys who are on the multi-year deals that feels like aren't playing the best.
Ultimately, what it is it's those 3 rookies and not the 3 young players. Now it's the 2 young players, right? And I'm not including Baldwin and Ryan Rollins in that. It is the Kuminga, Moody, Wiseman trio. Now, as a trio, Kuminga's probably slightly better. Moody is way down, and Wiseman was also down from what they expected. So trying to put those 3 in lineups that worked for them, that changes what the other guy, like Steph, Clay, and Dre, they're probably just like, quit messing with this stuff because like, we're having to play with the new lineup. But on the other side, it's like, no, we have to figure out a way to get these 3 guys to the best of their ability. So that's really what the whole two timeline thing has become. It's not what it was last year. It is, how do you mix these guys so that they are good on the court and they don't screw up what the vets are doing? And I think we're starting to see now that even the vet lineup, that starting five is not doing as well. But at the end of the day, I think this season was also hinging on Jordan Poole. And we talked about this in the offseason. Now Jordan Poole has a target on his back, right? Now other teams are like, if we can stop Jordan, or if we can get him into this harried offense where he goes for himself and he's not passing to Clay and he's not passing to Steph and he's not passing, to Draymond and letting Draymond run the show. Maybe that's the way to beat the Warriors, is let Jordan Poole get his, and that's our best way to beat him. And not to say that that's happening every game, but we know the games that the Warriors are sort of disappointing in the fourth quarter. It's the games where it's like Jordan's turning the ball over and he doesn't know what to do, and he's like shooting crazy shots. Like, that is part of these fourth quarter collapses for sure.
Yeah, I think Marcus Thompson on Plus Minus said something that I definitely agree with, is that this is a team that plays like they are coming off of a championship and they're have like the wins that the Boston Celtics do. They're not playing like a 500 team, and they're in the sense of Jordan's taking 40 footers with 24 seconds on the shot clock. They just have this swagger to them that they are like these reigning champs, the top team, and they're not. And I don't know what needs to change, but I do think that was kind of targeted at Jordan a little bit. And while I don't think this entire thing is his fault, I think some of the things they're lacking on, which is, I had the stats up right here, but I think they're like, I want to say they're like second to last or last in no, sorry. They have like they foul the most, they turn the ball over the most, and they shoot the free throws the least. It's either they're 30th or 29th in all three of those categories. They foul the most, they turn the ball over the most, and they shoot the least amount of free throws. I think when you look at the shooting, the free throws the least, like, to me, that's okay. We need people to dive to the rim and shoot more shots at the rim, because they take the most 3-pointers in the league as well. Like, they're top 3 in that. So you need more people to diversify your offense and shoot more shots in the paint. And Jordan provides that. And I think he does a good job of that in the fourth quarter specifically. Like, he attempts that more. But I think for me with Jordan, it's like, is the offense good enough, or does the offense make up for the lack of defense, for the minus defense that he is? And sometimes I don't think so. So I think that's been a frustrating part. And I mean, I keep saying it. I'm not gonna put together a highlight clip of, not a highlight, a low light clip of this, because I just don't even know where to start. But I swear, it's almost every game where there's a play where Jordan goes to the rim, makes a shot, and he falls, and he's slow to get up, and he's also talking with the ref, and it's a 4-on-5, and they easily get a bucket on the other end.
Yeah.
It's just like, that just happens once or twice every game, and I don't understand how he's not getting chewed out about that stuff to not let that happen, because that's
probably because
he got punched in the face in the offseason.
Well, some of that, something like that, but also Kerr probably knows, like, if I chew him out publicly,
he's just gonna get all sad.
Yeah, it's just the way that he.
Oh my god.
Well, but that's coaching, right? And that's why Kerr has been really good, is because he understands how to communicate to each person. He knows that he can get in Draymond's face because Draymond wants to be accountable, and he knows that Draymond's going to yell back at him, and he knows that he has to be able to take that, right? He knows that KD was kind of sensitive and didn't really, KD just wants to play, and he doesn't really want to hear any inspirational speeches. And he probably knows that he just has to let Steph be Steph. And all of those things are treating those three guys differently. How do you have to treat Poole so that he can play? How do you have to treat Ty Jerome? This is communicating with Ty Jerome about, dude, you're the underdog. You got to do X, Y, like that's why coaching is important. This is not the Marines, right? You don't treat everyone exactly the same. You're not a drill sergeant where everyone has to do the exact same thing, because everyone's personalities are different. And you learn that from coaching, even with little kids, in coaching little league or coaching basketball or whatever. You have to treat each child differently because they receive information differently. And maybe Kerr has to figure that out with Poole to an extent. How do I communicate with this guy to where he gets it? What drives him to succeed? Was giving him this giant deal before the season the best thing for him? Maybe not, but then you don't do it and you probably lose him because he probably wants to go get the keys to another team, right? So
Good thing he's a
all
restricted
of
free
those
agent.
things, all of those things are involved in the
Yeah.
whole thing. So
Yeah. I know. I feel like we can go down the roster and make complaints about everybody, but Pools definitely stand out to me, at least defensively. One of the worst defensive players I've seen. Um, but yeah, I mean, even Wiggins slows. He's been slowing down. He finally has a good game against the Wizards, and then he doesn't play against the Clippers. I just watched that game actually before this podcast. I've been slacking on watching all the Warrior games, but I'm up to speed. And Anthony Lamb had a really nice pass in that game. I feel like we give Anthony Lamb a lot of crap,
well,
or
he's
I
the
like
target.
Warriors Twitter
It
does.
seems
He's
like
the
he's the
target,
target for everything.
and he's like. I can't even blame him sometimes. I'm just watching. I'm like, thank you for giving energy and hustle. Thank you for doing the dirty work. Thank you for boxing someone out. Like, and our team
It's
doesn't do that.
mostly offensively though, because the complaint about him
Is
is
defense.
he's the guy that when the ball ends up with the shot, it's his man that's always rotating that he's not getting to. Like that's the
Mm,
that's the and I'm looking for that more now because people are saying that. But yeah, it's his closeouts that are a little slow, which kind of
got
makes
it.
sense because he's a tweener, right? He's a tweener who's not quick. Like Draymond is a tweener, but Draymond is quick and Draymond can read everything. So, by the way, Draymond's podcast with Jalen Rose, did you hear it?
Mm-mm. I
Okay,
don't listen to Dre.
I don't subscribe to Draymond shows, but when I saw that Jalen was on it, I had to subscribe it. I think you'll like it. It's pretty good. All right, let's talk about the All-Star game stuff. You know what? Before we talk about the All-Star game, Steph's injury. I don't think we really talked too much about Steph's injury, but we did get a little bit of a timetable, and it sounds like he's going to be out for a little while longer. Probably not coming back in this current stretch of games. I don't know if it's going to be another 2 weeks or another 3 weeks, but when he was talking about the injury, he hadn't even really been able to get on the court yet. So this is the knee thing, and the longer he's out, the longer the current roster is going to be able to get into that shape that they need, because everyone talks about the turning it on and turning it off. I think the true turning it on for the Warriors is figuring out their playoff rotation now and having guys achieve, or having guys understand their roles in these last 24 games or whatever it is, to set up whatever the playoffs are going to be, because they're not that far out of 3 or 4, and we've been saying that all season, but they can't they they give up so many games to get back to 500. It's almost like this is like someone's writing this on paper, and it's like pro wrestling or something. Just the way that they'll win 3, and we're like, okay, finally they're out of this 500 mode, and then they just lose 3 in a row to get back to 500. It's crazy how it's been happening. But that, to me, that's what turning it on is getting everybody back. Like you said, Wiggins finally found himself, and then he didn't play the next game. I don't think we even know
Mm-mm.
why he didn't play the next game, right? Like, it just said personal something. Like, who
Yeah.
knows what that reason was? But the longer Steph is out, the longer it's going to be able to take them to get into that. Like, okay, let's create whatever our playoff rotation is now. We got to put it together, and GP not being there will hurt that as well. So that's I think what the big thing with Steph is. I think they can probably play similar to the 500 ball when he's gone, but they're not going to be able to dial it up with him gone for sure.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, that's fair. Do you think they're gonna actually I'll look at the standings right now. So they are currently ninth in the West, 500, 29-29. They're half a game out of 7th, they're a game out of 6th, they're 2 games out of 5th. It's like they are within, it's so doable. 3.5 games out of 3rd. It's just, Yeah, I mean, we keep saying it every week. I keep saying it every week. Like, I'd love to be optimistic about this team and say like, oh, look how easy it is to get into like third place. You're only 3 games out of there, but they haven't proven yet that they can put together a string of games that look promising. At least, they'll win one, and I get all excited, but then I have to go back and be like, oh wait, they only won by like 3.
Yeah.
It's just. Do you think they're going to go for anyone in the buyout market?
That
I have
was that was another question I was going to ask you. Kevin Love signed with the Heat. I think that everyone knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
Who else is getting bought out? Like there were a couple players that I was hitting you and Ben up about. I was like, oh, what if Pat Beverly gets bought out? Pat Beverly or Ty Jerome? And you both were like, nope, Ty Jerome. And then who was the other one that I hit you up against? Was it Stanley
Johnson?
Stanley Johnson
If you go
versus
back in this
Anthony
podcast,
Lamb?
there was a point where there was like these 4 players that came in to work out with the Warriors. It was like Ben McElmore. It was the beginning of the year, like Kenneth Faried.
Yeah.
There was like 4 guys. I don't think Stanley Johnson was a part of that because I think he was on the Utah Jazz. But I know I think it was in that episode or prior. I was like, can we get Stanley Johnson on this team? Like, I would be really intrigued on what Stanley Johnson would look like. But here, I put together this. We did a podcast on the BAM, and I put together likely
The
buyout
possible
candidates.
buyouts.
So Westbrook, John Wall, Patrick Beverly, Dario Saric, probably not. Seth Curry, question mark, so probably not. Corey Joseph, Goran Dragic, Thaddeus Young, DeAndre Jordan, Derrick Rose, Will Barton, Nerlens Noel, Serge Ibaka, Stanley Johnson. Do any of those, to me, like, not really.
Thaddeus Young is
Thaddeus
kind of
Young,
interesting.
He's kind of JaMychal Green, though.
Yeah, true. Very true.
And then I put, so already bought out and signed Danny Green with the Cavs, Reggie Jackson with the Nuggets, Terrence Ross with the Suns, Goga Batatste with the Magic, Dwayne Dedman with the 76ers, Justin Holiday, who I thought would have been really interesting with the Warriors because he was on the 2015 team.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially what Anthony Lamb does, maybe better. But he went to the Mavericks, and then Kevin Love with the Heat.
There's no 100% surefire ones in that
There's
list.
not. And if there's not, then I don't see them doing it, because if they put on that 15th guy, like, what is it, multiplied by 7? You give a vet min contract to $2 or $3 million that turns into 14 or 21 million. Like, will Lacob pull the trigger on that? I think Stanley Johnson brings better point of attack defense and better team defense than what Anthony Lamb has right now. But I think the 3-pointer is a question mark because I think he's actually shooting like 40% from 3 right now, but it's only on like 1.5 attempts or something. Yeah. He's normally like a 31%.
And if you wait until the end of the season to sign Anthony Lamb, then you save a lot of money because you only got to sign him at like right before the end of the season, right?
Yeah.
So
where's Iguodala?
Okay, so that was gonna be my next question. Is Andre? That's somebody who should be a plus if he's healthy. But the fact that he's not healthy and we don't know anything, like this is like Wiggins going on his taking a personal day. We don't know anything about Andre, and I'm not saying Wiggins didn't need it. I'm saying we don't know. It could have been some family related, whatever. I'm not saying that I don't believe he needed the day off. I'm just saying we don't know as fans. We don't know what's up with Andre. What was it 3 weeks ago on the podcast? He said, this one's not going to take long. I'm going to be fine. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. And we haven't seen him since, and he hasn't talked about it since. Though I haven't listened to the last. I don't think they did a podcast this week, but I didn't listen to the last one.
People said that he was in like the potential Udonis Haslem role, and I scoffed at them because I think Udonis Haslem like can't touch the floor and like shouldn't play at all. He's legitimately just a player coach and sometimes plays, but I think it's all minus minutes. Iguodala, like, I think he still has plus minutes in him, and he showed that a little bit. But man, like, he really is turning into that Udonis Haslem type of spot on the roster where he's just like legitimately just like a player coach right now. And obviously, we don't know enough about the injury, but man, like, he's played 3 games this entire season. Last year, played like maybe 18.
So before the season started, I said, they should just let Andre do what he wants and have him come back after the All-Star break. We're right after the All-Star break now, so he's going to play. This would be a good time. And the fact that we haven't heard anything, I guess, is probably good because he's trying to get his body right. I just worry that all the work that he's doing to get his body right it's just going to lead to another injury. And that's what
Yeah.
you can't predict because,
So
and it's so unfortunate because this dude is so smart. He's such a good teammate. He's everything that they actually need. And it's just his body's failing him.
what I will say about the Iguodala injury though is that JJ, when we went to the Warriors versus Pistons game, JJ pointed out, he was like, "Hey, look, like Andre's in the tunnel in a warm-up suit. Like he's
Yeah.
like kind of geared up." And then he doesn't play and he comes back out to the bench with this
Regular
fully
clothes.
suited
Yeah.
up, regular clothes, street clothes. And 3 games later he starts playing again. Like we didn't really get that update with
Yeah.
when he started playing initially, like maybe a game or two before he started playing. But so that's I guess a little bit of, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we probably won't hear until like a game or two before he's back.
But he's got to put it on the pod, right? Like that's that he's got
True,
to.
true. That's the point of the pod. He's supposed to be the Woj of himself.
So just quickly to go back to the Draymond and Jalen, the reason why I want you to hear it is because we've had this conversation about what the new media is, and Jalen gives a really good explanation of the new media. He explained it better than Draymond explained it, so you should listen to that. All right, All-Star Game weekend. That game yesterday was a bit of a travesty.
Yeah.
Is it the worst All-Star game they've ever had? There's some
I don't know
bad
about
ones.
ever, but I've like since they've done the new format, like since I've been heavily paying attention, that was definitely like the worst one.
Yeah.
And we might have been biased last year because last year was bad too in terms
Yeah.
of like competitiveness, but we got to see Steph hit 16 3-pointers.
Yeah.
And I think that was I'd hope for the everyday fan, like who's not a Warriors fan, like that was entertaining because I thought that's what made that All-Star game like at least watchable.
Boston fans are probably not too bothered with last night's All-Star game.
I thought that was like, I thought Tatum's performance, like I appreciate that he was putting out effort and stuff, but I thought it was like this is not even that entertaining the way you're scoring. Like he played 39 minutes. Mazzulla was his coach, kept him in for the entire second half. Like it was
Why?
shameless chasing for that trophy because it's a Kobe Bryant trophy and that's his idol. I respect it, but it's like, damn, that's shameless as hell. Like,
hey man, that's
it's
risky
the
to
All-Star
me.
game, 39 minutes. Like there's a point in the All-Star game you could tell with the players, like, okay, I'll let you cook. You gotta let me cook though. Like,
Yeah.
kind of switching off. Tatum was just like, hell no. Like I'm like
Luka was just,
and
but was Luka supposed to let everyone cook?
I don't know.
Jesus, dude.
I don't know. But yeah, Tatum was just taking like layups at points just to get the point number up. And I was just maybe I already have like a vendetta against Jason Tatum.
Good branding for Jordan, for Team Jordan though, because that was his first time wearing his new Tatum 1.
I mean, I will give it to him though. The most entertaining part of the entire game was him versus Jaylen Brown. That like one-on-one setup for like 3 possessions was probably the most entertaining part of the entire game. And when Donovan Mitchell was mic'd up, that was fun.
That was fun. Jaylen Brown looking like a Batman with that mask. I was a little disappointed in the Inside the NBA guys. I wanted the Inside the NBA guys to treat the broadcast a little bit more like a broadcast and less like chilling on their couch,
Less
and
like
not
their actual show.
not speaking into the mic. Well, at least in their show, they're at a desk and they're on TV, so they have to, look at the right camera and stuff. This was just, oh, we're not going to be on TV for the most part, so we're just going to slouch in our chairs. We're just not going to pay attention half of the time. And you couldn't hear them for a lot of it, I was frustrated. I wasn't gonna go back to Reggie Miller and the play-by-play guy, but I wanted more out of that broadcast. I think it would have made the experience better. But then again, maybe it was also just a dud game, and they couldn't have done anything to save it. But I love those guys so much.
It's more watchable than last year's.
Yeah, in that alternate broadcast for sure.
In the alternate broadcast, yeah. They were messing up in the beginning when like Ernie was talking and introducing all the All-Stars, and you could hear Shaq and Chuck like cracking up or like talking, and
they were talking
this
over.
Is just bad. Like the beginning was bad, but when Shaq said Chuck was drunk, I actually don't know. Like I could sympathize with Chuck feeling like, I think there was a point in his audio where it was delaying and he could hear his own audio. And I could tell you from personal experience how that is the weirdest feeling of being able to hear yourself and it's delayed. I could see how he was like acting like what do I say? Because it sounds so weird.
So it was the part of it was during the draft. And I want to ask you about this draft in a second. But Felix, my stepson, your stepbrother, he didn't understand why Chuck was talking like that. And I was like, I think it's because he's hearing echo. Like you ever try and talk into a mic and then you can hear the echo. It's distorting and it's really hard. So then Shaq started saying that he was drunk and that the sponsor was Patron, and Chuck was like, now I will say the way to handle that situation is to try and tune out your ears and just speak. It's kind of hard even hearing your own voice in your
It's
headphones.
hard.
It took me a while to get used to that, but even just knowing that this is happening, Chuck should have just spoke and not let it bother him. That's what he was supposed to do, but I'm sure he's just never had to deal with that or hasn't had to deal with that in a long
Because everything's
time.
so professional with
Yeah.
they don't mess up like that.
Yeah.
Because for my podcast, like, everyone's got earbuds in and there's 4 of us. And if someone has their earphone volume too high and I'm talking, I could hear myself from their earphones hitting their mic.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of a delay and it
Yep.
just drives me nuts and I can't like think or speak properly. So if that's happening to Chuck, like I could totally see how he was, for me, I'm able to deal with it more because it happens so often that I'm able to push through. But if it doesn't happen for him at all, like I totally get it.
But he is so Chuck that he had to like have the face that made it look like something was wrong. And then he was speaking like something was wrong. And so when you're in that moment, you don't want to let the guy die, right? You don't like you're Kenny or Shaq. So Shaq just started making fun of him, which is kind of what they do. So that was fun. And so you're kind of distracted away from what Chuck's problem was, which was his headphones and the mic. And so, when I saw Chuck doing that, I'm like, come on, TNT. Like, how many, like, you guys do all these broadcasts? Like, how do you screw up on this one?
But
Someone
it
forgot.
made for a classic moment.
Yeah,
And that's
for
like
sure.
so TNT of them,
Yeah, for sure. But I could see like Chuck kept pointing at his head, like he kept doing this, and I was like, "Uh-oh, something's wrong." And then he would like look to the side, and he kept doing this. But that's the problem with having a one shot thing, right? A wide shot. That's all they had. They didn't have this overproduced thing where in the studio, like if Shaq's having a problem with his headphones, they just cut to Chuck and Kenny and they say, okay, you guys got to talk for like 3 minutes while we fix Shaq's what's going on. And the audience doesn't even know. In this case, we totally knew what it was. All right. What'd you think about the way that they did that draft though?
That was another highlight. That was awesome. The hour of 4:30 to 5:30 between that whole draft was a top moment.
So I liked it because you got to see Giannis's personality.
Such a great personality.
He's so funny. Some of it is a little bit of naiveness, because he's not even that young anymore. But we saw him when he was, a really young guy, and he would say some stuff where you're like, "Are you really want to say that?" But it was all in fun. He would
And it's
talk.
also English is his second language, or
Right,
maybe even his
right.
third. I don't know what else he speaks, but I know it's not his first language.
So just seeing his personality, he's such a good representative for the NBA. It would be interesting if he was playing in LA or playing in New York or playing in, San Francisco to see if he could even be bigger than he currently is playing in Milwaukee. But him and LeBron was fun. When he picked John Morant, when it wasn't wasn't time to pick John Morant. I was wondering if he did that on purpose or if he did it on accident. I think he did it on accident, but I'm not 100% sure because it did set up a really funny moment. But what do you think? Like, Lauri Markkanen and Jokic being the last
That
two
was
guys on the
hilarious.
starters.
LeBron was not picking Jokic. I would
No
100%
way.
agree with
He
Draymond.
was
He was not
totally
picking.
picking
He was
Lauri
picking
Markkanen.
Markkanen. Yeah.
But okay, but if people who were watching sort of understood how it went, the second LeBron took Embiid, if you're
Yep. He
Giannis, you
took
go,
a
"Oh,
center.
I'm just gonna pick Jokic last." He just took the one center. He
But
doesn't need to have two
Giannis
centers.
has learned. Giannis has learned in years past. He's like, okay, I guess it's time for me to take the center. Or
Yeah.
like the centers get picked pretty quickly. But yeah, once one center gets picked, you could wait till the last pick to pick the other one.
So I wish Steph was there. That was definitely a little bit of a downer for Warriors fans that know Steph because he's a lot of fun in that game. But what about All-Star Weekend? Were you able to watch all that stuff?
Yeah, I saw everything. The Miz hitting the almost buzzer beater. I was like making food and I heard everyone go nuts. I was like, "What?" And I saw the replay of that. But the Rising Stars game
That's the
was
only one I didn't watch was the Rising Stars.
was boring. I wanted Scoot Henderson to like cook, but I think like all the rookies and the sophomores were like kind of like, we know who you are, and we like
Yeah.
want to make sure like that like you can't just come in and do all this
It's
stuff.
like how Jordan and Pippen treated Kukoc in the dream
Yeah,
team.
yeah, exactly. Like I felt like that's how they kind of handled Scoot, and I was like, damn, like respect, but I wanted to see Scoot cook. Um, so, so what else happened? Skills challenge sucks. They need to change the idea. You think of like the 3-point contest, Dame wins. It's like, okay, he's the best 3-point shooter in the
Yeah.
league. He's not, but like, he's like a top 5 3-point shooter in the
Yeah,
league.
he's
Like,
like Steph, high volume, hard difficulty. He's not ever going to have the highest percentage because he
yeah.
takes hard
But
shots.
that's the point. Like the 3-point contest, you find out who the best 3-point shooter is. The home run derby, you find out who the best home run hitter is. The dunk contest, you find out who the best dunker is. The skills challenge, yeah, Laurie Markkinen, Jordan Clarkson, and Colin Sexton, you're the most skilled players in the NBA. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
They need to
it was
find a new
pretty
way.
silly. It was I think it was a way to get more Jazz players involved.
I mean, no, they did it last year too. It was the same idea. It was the Antetokounmpos versus the rookies versus the Cleveland Cavaliers when they did it in
I
Cleveland.
used to like when they did the stuff with the WNBA. I think they need to bring that stuff back. So you pair up WNBA with the NBA player and you do some sort of skills thing together. I think that
Mhm.
is a much better idea. I'm trying to remember what was that third thing. I think the third thing. So you remember in the skills challenge when they were doing the game where you had to go to the different spots and shoot and get
That
different
wasn't
points.
the skills challenge. I know you're talking about the Tyrese Maxey and Scotty Barnes just missing the 1 foot away like 10 times in a row.
No, but whatever that game was within
Uh,
the All-Star night, what did they actually call that?
oh, it's when they shoot at different spots.
Yeah.
I don't know what they called it.
Was that part of the skills challenge though?
So it is, but do you remember last year they did some like break in between where you had to shoot these iconic shots?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You remember that? Where like, okay, here's a spot where Kawhi hit that fadeaway against the Sixers, like right corner. That was a spot you had to hit. That wasn't the skills challenge, and whatever that was, I thought that was hilarious. Not necessarily because they couldn't make it hilarious again. I just think Tyrese Maxey and Scotty Barnes together just missing the
Were
1-footers
goofballs.
was just goof. They are just goofballs. Scotty Barnes is just a big old goofball, so I thought that was funny. They can't replicate that again, but I thought that was funny
So
last year.
so years ago, that thing was an event in of itself, and
Mm.
they would take a player from the city,
And
a,
is it
a
the
WM
past present thing?
yeah, a WNBA player, and then they take like an OG
Yeah.
from that team, and then they would do that as the shooting challenge. So now we get the dribbling and the passing and all that
Do you
stuff.
have an idea or a solution? You say bring that back. That's what Max said on
I
our
think that's
podcast.
better. I think it's better to do that, but the problem is they have so many hours of content that they need to fill. But I think you could do the best one to do, which they will never do for the same
One
reason
on
that
one.
LeBron will never do
Yeah.
the slam dunk contest, is horse.
Oh, horse.
They should just do
I think
horse.
they could do horse. I was gonna say they'll never do the one on one king of the court stuff.
Yeah,
They'll
if
never
you
do it.
make horse non-dunking, because Mac McClung's like, okay, do this dunk, and they're like, no, I can't. But if you do it where there's no dunking involved and it's just all trick shots or deep shots, I think that would be really good.
I think it would be too, but I keep think like there's some weird pressure and stress that for some reason some of the players like cannot
That's what I'm
like get
talking about.
over.
They don't want to
Like
get embarrassed.
they don't, but they already. Yeah, it's weird. It's because like even like don't get me wrong, like a half court shot is hard, but do you remember like when Steph Curry was hitting all those half quarters at the buzzer? And so at the All-Star game, they did this little thing where like if Steph Curry could hit this shot, it's like $400,000 to a charity. And he like whiffs it like 4 times in a row. It's just like you put that pressure of like the charity and like having to do it and then like in front of everyone. Like Steph Curry's been on the biggest stages of all biggest stages. Like he's not gonna be worried at all. But when it's just him on the court with all the eyes around him, like everybody that I've seen, like 99% of the guys like just can't do it. And so I'm wondering like if horse would kind of be like that, where it's like, okay, you get the trick shot, guys, you get the bucket like I don't know who's like a bucket getter, like even like a Cam Thomas from the Brooklyn Nets, a guy who hits difficult shots. Terrence Ross, who's now on the Suns, like a guy who hits difficult shots, who'd theoretically really be really good at this. Like I could totally see them just getting butt cheeks. Like it's a different kind of butt cheeks than it is,
No,
you know.
I think it is, but if you make it a yearly event, it is something that these guys practice trick shots all the time, right?
Yeah,
And then they want to get into the event because it's just like the dunk contest. I have the Mac McClung said, I have 2 dunks that I've never seen anybody do, even though I think one of those dunks someone had done before. Um, and you'd have the same thing in this horse game. You'd be like, okay, uh, you know, bounce it off of this and into this and fade away 35 footer, whatever it is. Like you're creating shots for this contest, and it's just more content.
we got
It's
to stop giving them. I don't want to give them free ideas though. They need to hire us. They need to hire us because I think the NBA as a marketing company is like kind of. I don't think it's that. I don't think they're that good marketers. I don't want
nah,
to.
they
I
have
don't
to
want to.
market worldwide as well. It's not like the NFL only has to market in the US. But yeah, I mean, I new ideas are risky, right? Because they could fail. Like
Yeah.
that's why the 3-point shootout is the most consistently good one, because you don't have to do anything creative. You just have to shoot. And
Yeah, that's true.
there's rarely a bad 3-point shootout. It's usually always good. And they even added things. They added things like when I was younger, they never had the money rack. You just had a money ball at the end of
Yeah, of each
every
rack.
one. And then this new, like the deeper shot, like that was never a part of it when I
Mhm.
was growing up either. So
They're evolving with the game.
they've evolved a little bit, but that is a consistent thing. And
But
when
it's 98% LeBron's fault of why this entire weekend is not as fun as it should be. The best player of my generation, the second best player of all time, thinks he's, doesn't want to participate because he doesn't want to like be embarrassed or like thinks he's too cool for it. And then everybody who idolizes him follows suit. John Morant literally already said he's never doing the dunk contest ever. It's like, dude, who are you? Like that just pisses
I
me
mean,
off.
he would just win because of his gamesmanship, even if the dunks weren't as good as some of the other guys.
Exactly. But I mean, I do kind of feel for them though, because like the embarrassment and shame, like did you like the Jericho's did you watch the dunk contest?
Hmm.
Like Jericho Sims, like shout out to Jericho Sims, but him doing the same dunk 2 times in a row is almost like, dude, I kind of feel like embarrassed for you. Like you think this is cool and this isn't cool. It's not, I don't know, but
I mean,
who
it was amazing, but he needed like somebody to tell him, like, okay,
yeah, like
as
you need
somebody who has watched the dunk contest, every single one of them, here's how you need to start, and here's where you need to save your best dunk. And he was just like, I know too that I haven't really seen people do before, so that's what I'm gonna do. But he also didn't really have any charisma. He didn't believe in himself either.
Yeah, I mean, and again, shout out to him because Shaden Sharp, who would have been awesome in this dunk contest, drops out. Embarrassment, shame. Like, no, you don't need to focus on the second half of the
Yeah,
season. You
you
guys
can
are
focus
clipped.
on
Like
the
the
second
Blazers
half
are
and do the dunk contest at the same time.
exactly. And then Jericho Sims just kind of jumps in. I definitely, shout out to him. But I think one thing I would change though, and I'm giving out a free opinion here, is you leave an empty seat for the judges, and it's a fan seat.
Mm.
So we get to vote on social media for each dunk and give them a rating, and that's just like, what is it? Does every judge get to judge from 50 or is it to 5?
Well, they
Or is it to
used to do
10?
it. It used to do 1 through 10, and then now it's every judge gets
Gets to
50.
50 and
Mhm.
then they just average it out. So yeah, we should just be able
Okay,
to.
but how do you
I don't know.
govern the people
They
who
could-
are just trying to goof with it?
You can't. You just hope that there's outliers. There's people trying to goof with it on the high end. There's people trying to goof with it on the low end, and really the middle is what matters. You just hope that the outliers just cancel each other out.
Yeah, because I think there's a thing, there's something you can do there where maybe it's a fan or a celebrity or somebody who's knowledgeable about it, who understands how it works. But I don't. The social thing is so weird because you have so many bad faith people on social media that
I know.
they would just try to ruin it.
I'd
Like,
probably try to ruin it if like if a player I didn't like was, getting good dunks. I'd be like, yeah, if Mac McClung, I probably would have brought it lower. I don't like Mac McClung. But oh man, I had one more thing. Sorry, you go and I'll see if I remember.
well, I was gonna say, I really liked I really like Trey. I thought Trey was really good.
Oh, can I jump in?
Yeah.
So Jericho's, I think there also needs to be like a fail safe because someone correct me if I'm wrong or like you go rewatch it, but I think Jericho Sims beat Trey Murphy to progress to the second round. I think if you add up the scores, he beat Trey Murphy to progress to the second round when Trey Murphy had clearly the better two dunks of the first round. Do you agree? Like, do you
I don't.
remember?
Yeah, I thought Trey should have
Trey
advanced,
Murphy
but I
clearly,
didn't look at the math.
yeah. Jericho Sims won to progress to the second round, but what happened is he hurt himself on the second dunk. And so
Oh,
he hurt like his wrist or his arm or something because he had to honey dip and grab the damn paper.
yeah.
But there should be a fail safe. I'm like, hey, like the judges got it wrong. Like if he didn't
Mm-hmm.
get hurt, were we really about to see Jericho Sims versus Mac McClung in the final? I'm wondering if something either he did get hurt and the NBA or like Adam Silver or someone of power was like, yo, guys, like Trey Murphy has to progress like to make this entertaining. Because yeah, I'm pretty sure if you do the math, Jericho Sims did not progress, or he did progress. He just didn't actually go.
Wait, who was the fourth person in that contest?
I thought he was my winner. I think he could have won. Kenyon Martin Jr.
Oh yeah,
He
yeah,
just
yeah. KJ.
the Houston Rockets guys just depend on other people to lob them. Like if you remember last year, Josh Christopher and Jalen Green could not do the NFT dunk. Do you remember that when he had it around his neck and like they just could not like pull it off? Kenyon Martin Jr. same thing. He brings out a teammate in Jayshawn Tate and he couldn't get the dunk till like the third try. It's like don't rely on guys. Like just do it yourself.
Well, and then he
Then he
brought his
brought his
pops
dad
out for the
out.
next one.
Yeah, I think
I
he
agree
was.
with you. I think
I think he could have potentially, been in the finals. Like just looking at like the way he was able to leap and how he was able to contort his body in the air, like he was perfect pick. He just I think had a bad idea.
Yeah, I think they should outlaw people throwing lobs. You should
Yeah.
have to throw self lobs. I don't know about jumping over people anymore, or that can still be
No,
cool.
that was one of Mac McClung's. Like that was like him jumping over two people and then hitting the ball on the
See,
backboard and
but the
then
thing
dunking it.
is you had to. I didn't even notice he hit the backboard on the first
But that's
try.
what I think is the really good ones is when you see a dunk and you're like, oh my God, that was crazy. And then you watch it in slow motion and there was another factor that you missed that makes it even more crazy. To me, that's like an all timer.
Yeah, I mean that's good for the replays, but when you get judged, I wonder if every single judge saw that he hit the backboard.
True, true. I mean, he got a 50, but yeah, I could
Yeah,
see that. Even with the Trey Murphy dunk, like he lobbed it to himself. And while it was still coming down, like the ball didn't hit the ground yet. While it was still coming down, he
that's when he
jumped up
jumped. Yeah.
and did the dunk. Like that's insane.
Yep.
And I don't think the judges saw that or they
Yeah.
realized that.
I don't think they realized it. What about Kenny Smith is on the broadcast, is doing the announcing, and judges at the same time.
Get an inside view.
Yeah, I think so. Because he's like the spokesman for the dunk contest. And he's also done very well in the dunk contest from back in the day. So having like, and then being able
Kenny
to
Smith?
like, yeah,
I didn't realize that he was like a really good leaper. He
yeah,
was?
his signature dunk was he had his back to the basket, threw the ball between his legs, ball bounces off the top of the backboard, he comes in and reverse dunks it. That was his dunk. But what he can also do is he could go, Lisa, are you really going to give that dunk a 49? Explain yourself, right? Like, and he's got the mic right there. Lisa, what was missing here? You make these judges accountable because Karl Malone was the lowest rater out of everybody. I'm like, dude, you did one dunk your entire life, which was you dunked it and then you put your hand behind the back of your head. That's all you did.
Well, what do
Like,
you think about? I had an issue like initially, like Jamal Crawford is a judge, and he's maybe dunked 5 times in his career, right? But like, or he just wasn't like an actual dunker. But at the same time, it's like the entire analysts are all guys who've never touched a basketball, and yet we judge NBA players. So it's like, I guess technically, non-dunkers could judge dunkers because we are non.
but also
players.
he's he's a great like playground style player. So
Yeah,
he understands.
he'd be perfect at the horse thing, but they need to get
Yeah.
butt cheeks.
Yeah, he probably would. All right, just quickly, I just want to look a little bit at the this week in Warriors basketball. They have the Lakers on Thursday. I believe that is in LA. So they come back immediately. TNT game against LeBron and against AD.
New look
New
Lakers.
look Lakers, Rui. Um, you know, who is way more impressive than like to me, Vanderbilt. I thought Vanderbilt looked
He's just better
awesome.
Kaminga.
He looked awesome. And the Reeves kid is not bad.
Dude, I like Austin Reeves. You know, they were like, I don't know if this is true or not, but they were unwilling to like involve Reeves and like Max Christie in that Russell Westbrook trade for Kyrie. I guess that's what stalled it.
Huh.
I don't know how much
Interesting.
I buy that, but like I see what they see in both of those young players.
You need shooters, and you can't give up a shooter.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so they play Lakers. Then they come back to the Bay Area to face the Rockets on Friday. Then they got the Timberwolves on Sunday at home.
Ooh,
That might be a game for you to
I
go
got to
to.
see if friend of the pod John Krasinski is coming to town.
Yeah, that might be a fun one for you to do because that's 4:30, so it's early Sunday 4:30. Um, I I feel like predicting what the Warriors are going to do has been kind of a joke of an experience because they're so inconsistent.
I'm telling you, man, you can't predict optimism until they prove it. You have to be
But
pessimistic.
theoretically, if you look at their record,
It could
usually
be
when they're
3-0.
home, they win. Usually when they're on the road, they lose. So they should go 2-1 this week. We'll see. And then there'll be one game over 500. But I think it really, to me, it's all about keeping things even before Steph comes back. So Lakers, Rockets, T-Wolves, and then let's say Steph's not back next week. Blazers, Clippers, Pelicans. That's a little bit harder.
I mean, the Pelicans are dropping. We'll see if Zion's back, but the Blazers are also like what they split the season series with them so far. No GP2 now for the Blazers. You know, I think it's definitely a winnable game. Like theoretically, they should go in the next 2 weeks 4-2, but you know, I don't want to predict optimism until
You know what they're going to go?
500.
3-3. That's just who they are.
Yep.
All right, that's it from here. Hope everyone had a fun Monday. For those of you who had the day off, I hope most of you had the day off. But we'll be back sometime, possibly later in the week, depending on how these games go or if there's any news that comes out. But we'll be back soon enough for Bry. Actually, you know what? I didn't even ask you. The BAM.
Oh, we had on Giants beat writer Steven Risotto from SF Bay. He had a really good conversation with our baseball guys on the Giants. And then for the basketball podcast, we did the buyout market and predicting the buyout market. And then we also talked a little bit about all-star stuff. So that's all
Cool.
on BAM.
All right. So that's it. From here, for Bry, I'm Double G. See you when we see you. Peace out.